Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto, and on today's video we're going to detail, clean, paint, polish the engine for the CB900F. Stay tuned. Alright, so on today's video we're going to do the cleaning of the engine, and that may involve some painting. It's definitely going to involve polishing. It'll definitely involve a lot of cleaning. And this is just kind of the way that I'm going to go about it. For me, it doesn't mean this is the only way to do it, but this is what I'm going to do. So the first thing that I've started to do here, first and foremost, as soon as the carbs are off, those shop towels get stuffed in there to make sure nothing can find its way in there. I put some shop towel in the exhaust ports as well. And then the first thing is, this is just, there's not much left in here, but this is just a general purpose degreaser. And I'm basically just going around and giving it a shot everywhere just so I can allow that to soak. Basically, that's all I'm going to do. And it's kind of later in the evening right now, so the reason I'm starting it now is I want this to soak overnight, so it helps to lift off any of the caked on crap that has been on this engine for the last 40 years. And I don't even know for sure yet what's going to end up getting painted on this. It's really going to depend upon how it cleans up to begin with. My preference would be to not have to paint any of it, but I want it to look good. So we'll see how it looks once it gets cleaned up. And if it doesn't look clean enough for my liking, then some of it will be painted. I mean, for sure, this part of the case has to be painted because all the paint's come off it. I think, as I mentioned before, my plan is, step one, clean everything. Step two, I'll decide what gets painted and what doesn't. And I'm going to paint, if I paint, all these cases covers are going to stay on. Including the aluminum one over here. Everything will stay on, and I'll tape it off, and if I paint it, I'll paint it that way, just because it's just as big a pain in the backside to tape everything. I'll take those covers off and then tape up, in here. Like, why it's just easier to tape this up than it is to take it off and try to tape up an oily surface. So I can clean this, tape this up, so I don't get so I can don't get any excess black on here. But at the end of the day, if I do, it doesn't matter because this is going to get polished anyway. So whether it's corrosion or a bit of black overspray, it's not going to make a hill of beans difference because it'll all be polished and whatever, and new gaskets are going in here. Same with this down here. If I end up getting a bit of overspray on it, who cares? It's going to get polished. So that's the plan. Clean it, paint it, polish it, and then we'll see where we go from there. I do have two straps holding this engine to the lift, to the jack here. I will take those off one at a time. I don't want that engine sitting untethered because I don't want it to fall off and something getting damaged there. So some of the more interesting and challenging bits, I'm guessing that these hose protectors on here will be a bit of a bugger to get cleaned up, because this is probably like a spring coil type of thing, I would guess. So we'll see how that cleans up. That might require a lick of paint on there. And yeah, it's just more of the same. Like, I mean, this is just years of, probably a little bit of an oil leak from that valve cover, and then you get the shite from the front wheel gets all sprayed up there. And this is also one of those spots where the chain runs. It's always brutally nasty and filthy in there to get cleaned off, but that's just part of what you have to do. In the end, it's worth it when everything looks shiny and new again. So let's get after it. So one thing I'll add right off the bat here as well is you will not see me power washing an engine for a couple of reasons. One is I'm kind of mildly paranoid about using a power washer and water getting in places that it shouldn't go. So even though, you know, you can plug up, you know, the intake or the exhaust ports, and, you know, you can maybe tape some of this stuff off or put plastic bags over certain things or whatever. Yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of it, to be honest. And secondly, and this my shop up here is, you know, it's a long way to where I keep my my hose and whatnot. This is above my main garage. This is a 2-story garage. This is a second level, and for me to get this engine down to a place where I could power wash it and get it back up here, more trouble than it's worth and more strain than my back can take. So it's going to stay right here. It's going to get cleaned on the bike lift, and probably not quite as efficient, but it's the way that I'm going to do it. All right, so what am I going to use here? I've got just a small container, toothbrush with some kerosene. I got a screwdriver for getting into some of the smaller nooks and crannies for scraping stuff off, an old screwdriver, bigger scraper, and then I've got a variety of old dishwashing brushes, and this, I'm not even sure what this is. I guess like a detailing scrubbing brush, I guess you call it. So I just put a towel down to stop some of the junk getting all over the jack and the lift table, and really it's just a case of starting to pick away at everything. So there's no real secret to this sort of stuff. It's just scrape the crap off and clean it with kerosene. Once you've done a bit of scraping, then you can kind of start using the kerosene and the toothbrush to start lifting that stuff off there. All right, so once you've got a good scrubbing going on, and what I normally do is I wait with using any kind of brake cleaner like this until I've moved away a reasonable amount of the caked on crap, and with the screwdriver and the kerosene, and then I tend to get better results. Otherwise you just end up wasting a lot of brake cleaner. Yeah, it's just an ongoing process of picking away at it. So it's starting to get somewhat less nasty, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? I mean, it's these crevices in here that hold all of the chain lube and the crap and all that kind of stuff, right? And some of this stuff, it'll seem like it's not even dirt, it gets so hard, but yeah, you just got to kind of keep picking away at the stuff. And half an hour's worth of work, starting to clean up a little bit. You can see that I've done on the top of the engine case a little bit here too, and a number of areas where the paint is gone. It was kind of bubbling off here, so obviously that all has to get repainted. Starting to get a little cleaner inside there. Still a little ways to go. The other thing I'll show you here on this engine is the fins are kind of fairly deep. This is air cooled, oil cooled. There's no liquid cooling on this engine, but before I think about painting this, there's all kinds of crap in between the fins, which you don't want to be painting over that. That's one, it's not going to look good, and two, it doesn't help the cooling if you're just baking and layering dirt with paint and everything else on there. So I'm going to be using a combination of the various brushes that I have to get in there, Q-tips and whatnot, and I'll get as much of that crap out of there as I can. I'm going to take the manifolds off anyway. I'm going to take off some of these hoses. I might take off some of these brackets for when I paint the case. I'll take the engine mounts out, that kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to take off the clutch cover. I will tape off all the bolts though, and anything that I don't want to get covered in paint. And why am I painting the cases? Well, because oftentimes you get some corrosion and the aluminum starts to oxidize and then the paint flakes off. So I'll give that a shot of primer, self-etching primer, and then probably use a trim-clad high heat paint on top of that to finish that off. But that's the plan, and I'm going to clean the cylinder fins at the front the same way. These are really good. The carburetor boots, can't really get in there and clean properly and do whatever I need to do with those things still attached. And besides, they were hard as rock, so I have new ones to go on. Like these are, I mean, they can be, I mean, I've done it before, used wintergreen oil and alcohol, and sometimes you can rejuvenate these things, but these are really hard. And you can see here, that's not going to do much good for the for air leaks and whatnot. So when I fried these things off, the rubber has gotten so hard, it just splinters away. So these are not savable. Those will go in the garbage. I'll take the clamps off, clean the clamps, reuse those. But yeah, these are done. A little ridge there where it sits in the groove on the intake manifold. Everything just splintered. Prying them off, they just came apart. What I'm doing now is as you see, I'm just going over any of these kind of suspect areas and scraping off the loose paint. You can see the oxidization on the aluminum underneath the paint. There's all that kind of white flaky powdery stuff. So the idea is I want to get all of that off with the scraper, and then obviously it'll all get sanded before I prime it. So now I'm done with the scraper. I'm just taking a small wire brush here, and that just kind of gets some of the looser stuff off. It just makes it it's easier to do this than jumping straight to sandpaper, which I'll eventually get to. And it's also kind of handy to use this just anywhere where areas where I think I'm going to paint. Usually you end up finding some additional spots of loose paint. That's kind of nice to discover, because the last thing you want to do is go through the process of painting something and then only to find out that you didn't get all the loose stuff off. All right, so the first cleaning is done, and so what I need to do now, before I kind of get into sanding anything, is I'm going to go around and take off this bracket, hoses here. These engine mount inserts here will come out fairly easily. There's one at the bottom that's going to come out, but each of these bolts will get masked off, because nothing looks worse than painting all the bolts the same as the engine case, because then it just screams I've been painted without any due care. So if I leave everything on, these will all get masked off. All these bolts will all get masked off. Any of these fittings will be masked. I'll remove what I can, or what's practical. I'm not going to paint this, because this is all covered up with another cover. So this will just get masked off here. This has to be taped off. These have to be taped. So the less you know, from the fastener's perspective, you don't want anything covered in paint, because then it just looks like a, even though you are doing it, or I am doing a rattle can detailing of this engine, you kind of still want it to look as original as possible, and the only way to do that is to mask everything off and tape it up. And the better job you do, and the longer that it takes to do that, typically the better the end result's going to end up being. So I'm just using a screwdriver with a shop rag. Basically, I'm shooting in the brake cleaner into here, and then using this to get in there and clean the crap out. All right, so starting to get everything masked off here for painting. I'm not going to mask that top cam cover because it's all going to get stripped down anyway. So it's just going to take me way too long to mask that. So took off a couple of things, masked everything else up. So a couple of spots that I'll hit with some primer first, and then I'll do the black. So there's the etching primer on any of the spots where I got back down to bare metal. What I am going to do is I paint up around near the top here. I am going to just kind of use a masking board or a piece of cardboard here just to stop any excess paint going on the valve cover, even though I'm going to buff all that off and sand it and whatnot. I'll just make it a little bit easier. Those covers have been primed as well, so once it's dry we'll get to the color code. So there's the coat of paint on there. So of course this is going to look 10 times better once the cases are polished and the masking tape and whatnot is removed. But step one is done. Paint that I used, I've had pretty good luck with this stuff. VHT caliper paint. It's actually good for 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 490 Celsius, which in actual fact is even higher than the engine enamel. So, which I've also used before, but. VHT seems to go on really, really well. I like it a lot. The other paint that I've used before with success is this one, Tremclad High Heat. So any of those will work. I just happen to have 2 cans of VHT black, and so that's what I went with. Okay, so here's how it looks with all the masking tape off. So not too bad. Everything's kind of looking pretty decent there. So obviously it's going to make a world of difference when all the cases and covers are polished. So we're going to get to that next. And the other thing I have to do is on the edges of the top 5 fins here, it should be silver. So I'm going to paint the outer edges of these. And the way I normally do that is I wrap a rag on a block of wood or a sponge, spray the paint on the rag, and then I basically just dab it on there, so then it just leaves the silver paint only on the outer surface, and you don't get any paint anywhere else. But yeah, I'll show you that as well. So here's how I'm going to do the silver on the fins. This is Duplicolor High Heat Silver. So the plan for that is basically spray it onto shop rag, and then dab it on. Right. So there's the silver paint on the rag, on the shop cloth there. So basically all I'm going to do is just start dabbing that on like that. That's all there is to it. It only goes on the outer edge there. It doesn't go around the front or around the back. That's all it takes. There you go. that's how I do it. Not too bad. So this is the process I use to polish the aluminum cases and covers and whatnot. I'm not going to film the entire thing. That's just boring to watch. I'll just kind of show you a few of the steps and the end result and that kind of thing. So basically, what I do is I use, these are like 3M or Scotch-Brite pads that you attach to your Dremel. And there's different, I guess there's different levels of coarseness. These are the most coarse ones, and unfortunately this is the last one I have. Yeah, they work reasonably well. They don't last very long, so you go through a box of these things pretty quickly. But so basically what I do, step one is I go over the whole thing with these guys, and then I will wet sand with 800 and WD-40, and then when that's done, I'll go to 1000 and WD-40, and then when that's done, I'll just polish it with the I just use Autosol metal polish, and then that should get it good and shiny. So yeah, it's also important to wear a mask doing this stuff, because it does create some pretty nasty dust that I don't want to be breathing that stuff in. So there, I mean, you can see how easily that stuff comes off with the little moto tool there and the Scotch-Brite on it. So go over the whole thing like that, and then I'll show what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so I basically chewed through these three and one other one, so 4 of these heads on there, and that's basically what it looks like after the first step. Make sure you wear safety glasses if you try this at home, because this stuff flies everywhere, and basically what's coming off is the bits of this. As it wears down, it flies all over the place, and you're going to get covered in this black crap as it comes off. So yeah, it's messy, it's dirty, and there's pieces and bits flying everywhere. So you got to wear a mask. I got to wear safety glasses, and yeah, don't wear your best shirt. Yeah, so the next step is basically WD-40. Squirt the whole thing with WD-40, and then take your 800 and just start sanding. And I like to sand in straight lines. I don't like to sand in circles. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing. And I'm going to first use the 800, then I'll go to 1000, and then maybe 1500, and then the polish. Okay, so here's what it looks like after it's been sanded and before the polish. The other thing to know is that once I've got everything polished up and cleaned, I'm actually going to paint inside here with a high heat paint where it's supposed to be black. And then at the end of the whole process, this as well as the other covers will all get clear coated. All right, so there it is after the Autosol metal polish. So it looks pretty good, and you know, this is the kind of thing I think that if the more time you spend and the more polishing you do, the better it looks. So it really depends on what sort of a finish you want. You could, I mean, I could keep going at this for another hour with you know, the 1000 and the 1500 wet with WD-40 and more Autosol, and this thing would shine like a mirror. So yeah, it's just a matter of how shiny do you want it to be. And this one, I mean, I've got to still buff off some of the crap off here, because it you know, it's, again, it's all based on how much time you spend cleaning and buffing to make this thing as nice as possible. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean in here with some brake cleaner. and then I'm going to touch that up inside as best I can. And it may require me to kind of lightly resand and repolish the Honda, depending if I get any. I'm going to try not to get any paint in there. I use a very small detailing brush, but we'll see how that turns out. All right, so there's the finished product. Turned out okay. I did end up buying new screws for that cover because one of them was really badly stripped. I had to drill it, and if you remember when I did that, but anyway, I have all new screws for this, and I bought a bottom end and case gasket kit, so I'm hoping that there's actually a new O-ring for that as well. I'll go check that. Anyway, so that one's done. Still got the valve cover to do and the big case, but I figured I would start with the small one first. Process is the same for the others. All right, so there's what the cover looks like, clear coated and back on the bike. Looks pretty decent. And so now we'll do a shot here of the one that's all kind of nasty, and then we'll do another shot once it's back on after it's all been polished. And there we are after it's done. All polished up, clear coated, and a new gasket on there. So now I'm gonna move up to do the valve cover. Okay, cam cover shot before, and there is the cam cover after. So it looks pretty good. It is not perfect, but as they say, perfection is not affordable. Excellence will do. So I think it looks pretty decent. So there's a new gasket in there. I did use a little bit of silicone to hold that gasket in the base of the cam cover, just because I just find it's easier to get the gasket to stay in there with a bit of silicone. I know there's kind of folks that don't like using that stuff in there, but I tried to use it sparingly. And I think it also helps a little bit to just to make sure there's no oil leaks and whatnot. So there we go. I'm going to leave that strap there for now. I'd like to be able to show you the whole thing uncovered with no ratchet straps and paper towels and whatnot, but I just can't afford to have that thing topple off the engine stand. So there she sits. All right, so I just thought I'd show you a couple of shots of this cam cover in progress. This is, I don't know, I've got about an hour and a half, something like that, into kind of the first stage of using these are the kind of the coarse grade Scotch-Brite type of rotary tool pieces that I use. And I chewed through, I don't know, there's probably about 15 of them there, maybe. One's still in here. And because of these kind of ridges and whatnot, they get destroyed pretty quickly. It is very difficult to get into the corners and the crevices, so I'm going to have to, use something different to get in there. But you can see the dirt, and that's a combination of the aluminum that comes off here and this stuff just kind of shredding. So if I'll show you this is what I look like. I haven't looked at myself, but I imagine it's not pretty. And good job I'm wearing a mask and safety glasses there. So we'll see if you can actually see that, because I can't see what I'm filming right now. Anyway, so there you go. Just the first step. It's a dirty job, and as I said, if you undertake something like this, wear a mask, wear glasses, because otherwise all of this stuff ends up in your lungs or in your eyes, and it would be, neither of those things are a good thing. So wear safety equipment. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate it very much. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel. I'm shooting to see if I can get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. I'm getting real close. So thanks again to everybody who's watching and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. Keep the comments coming. I really enjoy reading those and responding to the comments, no matter if it's some constructive criticism or words of encouragement. It's all appreciated. So stay tuned. The next set of videos is going to be the bike going back together. Put the frame back on and the swing arm. There's a bunch of bearings to replace in the steering stock, and also for the wheels, forks to rebuild, and just generally a lot of cleanup to do as things get pieced back onto the bike. Thanks for watching.